All right, the man, the myth, the legend, Kevin Donahue returns to the Into the Absurd podcast. I've been waiting for this day for months, actually years, because it's been. I think I started the podcast back in 2020, and I think we did our first episode back then. So, welcome back. You were my third episode on the podcast, and now we're at I think I'm at 74 or something like that. So
Nice. Yeah. Thank you. It's good
feels
to
good
be
to have you
back.
back.
Thank you.
Yeah. And we were just talking about how um the left in particular, they preach all these ideas of, hey, you need to be accepting of others, you need to be loving of others. Yet when other people are like, oh, I feel this way about this issue, et cetera, some of them will come at you with, oh, you're a misogynist, you're a bigot, and all these things, right?
Mhm. Well, to start out, I would like to just express to the audience that when when we're going to talk a little bit about some LGBTQ issues today, this is coming from a gay man. So these are some issues and things that I've noticed within the community, and I just have some opinions ab- about the community and the way that the left is going about a lot of things. I just feel is counterproductive. So we can probably get more into that
That's
later.
our trigger warning.
That's our trigger warning. So um yeah, expect some controversial topics.
Well,
But
what have you?
did you
Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna ask, did you kind of prepare, or did you kind of have an idea of some of the things that we were going to talk about? Okay.
Yeah, I have an idea. Um, so I mixed cranberry juice with wine.
Oh, you know what? I kind
What?
of I should get an alcoholic beverage too. I
Oh
haven't drinking
yeah,
in a long time. Okay, let me
yeah. Go
check
for it. I
the
can cut
fridge
this
though.
part out too. So
Okay,
yeah,
yeah,
go
yeah.
for it.
I
Okay.
don't have any alcohol because I'm sober now. I thought we had something in the fridge, but that's okay.
Oh, you've been sober for a while?
Yeah, I've been sober since being in Texas. I drank
Oh shit!
one
I don't
weekend.
want to. Shit, I don't want to break that for you.
Well, I drank. I I broke the habit of
Okay.
drinking. You know what I mean? And so I
Yeah, you
drank
broke the
once
habit. I
when
get
I
it.
mhm.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I drank the one weekend that I visited Austin when I visited some friends. But yeah, I've been sober since getting here, so
So,
that's nice.
um, I think we both struggled with addiction in the past. And have you noticed anything about being sober and have you been more productive, or you've been clear in your head?
Um, for a couple of months, I was not productive at all, and I actually was experiencing a lot of anxiety and just kind of paralysis, like a mental paralysis.
Yeah.
Um, and I wouldn't say I'm completely out of that rut yet, but taking steps in the right direction, and I can see small improvements. And I think what it was is when you're not drinking 3 or 4 times a week, when you're not doing all these drugs, your your mind starts coming back with all the things that you were trying to subconsciously avoid or consciously avoid
Yeah.
by behaving that way. So I noticed a lot of things start to come up. I had to re-grieve some situations and process things that I had thought I had processed a long time ago, but you know, things come up when you're
Yeah.
sober.
I think that happens a lot also when you're with workaholicism, or however you want to say that, when you're just constantly trying to work on things and get stuff done. You just
Mhm.
kind of let all that stuff in your head that you need to work on, you just let it like whatever, you avoid it by putting all of your attention towards the things that you're focused on. Like for instance, you might be worried about depression, so then you write a bunch of philosophy instead and try to whatever. I
Right.
mean,
Just like you, Greg. I'm just kidding.
so just
Um, well, yeah, I mean, we like to keeping busy is like probably the number one way that people avoid dealing with emotions and like intrusive thoughts and just things that they want to avoid thinking about. And honestly, like I'm not saying that's even a bad thing because sometimes we ruminate too much.
yeah.
And if you're left with too much time to think, you can kind of think something into its own grave, or I don't know, like, and like when you're just thinking about something, you don't necessarily um like find the solution to what all these things you've been overthinking. You can just get into a
I agree.
rumination. So
Yeah.
staying busy is not like necessarily a bad thing. But
It,
yeah, it took me like 6 months though of being here before I slowly moved out of it. And I actually like kind of had like a manic episode. And
ooh.
that's when I signed up for the gym. I literally signed up. I woke up at like 6 a.m. And this is like after like 6 months of just gaming and watching Netflix and sitting on the couch and just like kind of
Yeah.
berating myself like, oh my God, like I'm sober now, but why am I not doing anything? And I'm like, oh well, Kevin, you have to do something, you know.
Yeah.
And well, I just had this manic episode and I literally just got in my car. I didn't even think about it. I typed in where the gym was in the maps. I drove there, went in and was like, can I talk to someone? And then talked about the different plans. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna do this. And then they told me about personal training. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna do that too. Like I because I was in this manic state. And then I remember
Yeah.
my manic episode kind of ended and I was like, well shit, like I signed up for all the stuff. So I better start going. And then I went and I've been going. So it kind of was a very positive, spontaneous thing.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. Like when you get those urges, you just wake up one day and like all of a sudden you want to go to the gym. You're like,
It was like definitely, I feel like, how do you say, in an impulse from maybe like my subconscious or something that was pushing me, that was just like you need to take action. Well, I had gotten off the phone with our friend Tyler Moye,
yeah,
and he was like, Kevin, because he knows that I've been in and out of mental ruts, you know,
hmm,
and he was just like, Kevin, you know so much about the mind, but you need to take action now. And I was like, I completely agree. Like I'm
yeah,
just I'm just too much in my head and I need to start taking physical action. And then I had that manic episode and it's been working out.
it is it a manic episode or is it just like motivation?
Yeah, it could have just been motivation, just
You
like
know?
or like inspiration, literally,
Yeah,
because I just woke up and it was like 7 a.m. and I was like, I didn't even think. It was like 10 minutes between waking up and being at the gym
yeah.
and signing up. So
Well, I think there's like one issue with our society is that we want to make everything like a psychological disorder. Like, you know what I mean?
right,
If you,
no,
yeah, we like over diagnose psychological disorders when like really, you're just feeling normal human emotions, right?
right. Yeah, I think I was being a little bit dramatic when I said a manic episode. I think I have experienced mania before, but really, what even is that? I just was feeling inspired in that
Yeah.
moment.
Overly, extremely overly
Mhm.
inspired. Well, I mean, unless you were like really like egotistical about it, like, oh, I'm gonna look so hot when after I'm done at the gym.
I mean, well, that's like the ideal scenario, but I mean, not after going to the gym one time, but eventually, I want to get a little bit hotter.
Yeah. No, it's nice. It feels good when you like just you get in the habit of going to the gym. But if you go like I realized that at some point, if you keep going, just like a lot of like healthy habits that we have, if you just keep going every day, sometimes it can turn into like a procrastination, like from other things that you need to do in your life, where it's like, you know, like, why am I going to the gym? You know, I need to be like raking my yard or something like that, you know?
Yeah, that's true. I don't think I've reached that point yet. Or like the gym for me is not in the way of things. It's definitely something that
Yeah.
the discipline from going to the gym has actually helped me to tackle other things uh better too, because
Okay.
the habit of getting up and forcing myself to go to the gym 3 days a week to
Yeah.
at 5 a.m. because that's when my personal training sessions are. That habit of
Yeah.
forcing myself to go no matter how tired and how much I don't feel like it, I've been able to kind of like carry over to, okay, I had to deal with some tax stuff
Yeah.
and something I've been procrastinating on a month, but I was just like, I'm gonna do it right now. And so
Yep.
I like got it all organized, got it all done, and just other things. So it's slowly carrying over to other habits in my life that I'm trying to develop.
Yeah.
Meditation.
It's also like there's always like so many things that you feel like you have to do, because once you start thinking, oh, I need to do that tax stuff, like, oh shoot, I need to clean the counter. Oh no, the yard needs mowed. Like all these
Yeah,
things that
like
start popping in your head.
I feel like I definitely struggle with this. Like you just get paralyzed
Yeah.
when you start thinking about all that you have to do, instead of that actually motivating you to do it. I mean, I know, and there's research into this too, but like the more you think of what you have to do at a certain point, yeah, you just get overwhelmed and your brain literally just freezes, or like you just
Mhm.
freeze. Cause like instead of that motive, I mean, I guess some people can be motivated that way, where they're like they think of all they have to
Yeah.
do and then they're just like knock it all out. But you
No, it
you
gets
kind of,
stressful when you have like
yeah,
so many things and like which one should I do first?
exactly.
It's
I
the
have
same
like
when you're at a restaurant and there's a bunch of options and you just like,
I
shoot,
know,
what should I
I'm just
get?
like, give me six options. Like, what are your
Yeah.
six specialties? Have a picture, like I'll point out one. But when, yeah, like these restaurants that have 60, like literally I went to a Mexican restaurant the other day that had 60 different things and no pictures. So I was like,
Dude.
do you guys have a specialty or something? Like just put some carnitas on there. Just give me something. But yeah. Mm.
Do you think uh, so we were both in Moscow for a while, and we both kind of experienced some like definitely states of insanity while we were there. So like what about like going to college, do you think like makes people like break out in these like mental breaks and whatnot?
Break out of, okay. I
Just like
think,
go in, sorry, not break out, but
oh,
like
like
be
go
in them.
into this.
Yeah, go into the
I
psychotic
think
episodes.
I think it's a couple of factors, but for one, college is the first time for a lot of people that you're not under the the direct influence really of your parents.
Like
It's the first
freedom.
time, yeah. It's the first time in your life where you're not under their roof and you truly get to explore your own identity outside of the family unit.
Yeah.
And another thing about college that I have sort of noticed and reflect on is it's the perfect place to do all this exploring, because you can do all of this stuff like these drugs, these psychedelics, and the drinking stuff, and still feel like you are progressing towards some kind of goal.
Yeah.
Like there's no other time in your life where you can really be drinking and doing all these stuff while like having this internal sense of like, oh, I'm still on my way toward something
Yeah.
better, because you know you're getting your degree. At
Yeah.
least that's how I perceive it. Because I was reading an article about, I was like, I'm 24 years old and I'm having an existential crisis after graduating college. And I realized it was a thing that happens to a lot of people after graduating college, because it's
Mm.
the first time in their life also, once you graduate, that you are life becomes real because you actually have to figure out what you want to work toward. It's not this thing that's been given to us for the first 18, 20 years of our life where you're just in school and you, no matter what you do, no matter how much you screw around, you're still kind of working towards something. It's the first time where you're not, kind of, where it's not set into place for you. So, but college gives that freedom. And so I feel like
it's kind of like in that freedom, you kind of go a little insane.
Yeah, because you just have the freedom to do it. You have the freedom to go insane in college because you can, and you'll still be okay, or you have a sense that you'll be okay. So like you can not go off the deep end, but because you're feeling so secure and explorative in that phase, you're just like, screw it. I'm going to take two tabs of acid and see what happens. And I feel like I went a little bit insane in college because, mainly just psychedelics. And I was like interested in seeing if psychedelics could show me like the underlying fabric of reality. I kind of think I went into it like deeply, just like perception too. I wanted to see how your brain creates your reality, and but just by shifting the chemical composition of your brain, just one tab of acid, you literally perceive a different world. At least, I mean, I tripped hard. I always tripped so hard. So I what I was experiencing on my trips, I don't think a lot of my friends were experiencing. I think I just have like a sensitive brain is what I boiled it down to.
No, same here. I'll like, there was this one time where I was at this party and I literally sat in the same spot. Well, you were there, but I literally sat in the same spot for hours on end. Yeah.
Wasn't it outside on the little bench? Yeah.
I just sat there and I thought for like hours on end, and I felt perfectly content. Like I didn't feel like moving. I didn't feel like talking to anyone. I was just like,
there was music out there, and I think you were just vibing.
Yeah, and I could like see everyone like overhead. It was crazy. What?
Are we allowed to talk about like what drugs we did at that party? I don't know. I don't know. We were. I mean, I don't know. I don't.
Yeah, just don't say. Just don't name any names.
Of the drugs.
Yeah, and of course we're just pretending. We've never done any of this stuff.
Yeah, we've never done any drugs.
Yeah.
But no, those were some interesting experiences. I mean, I don't want to expose us, but there was the one time where we had like mixed at least 4 different things. That probably shouldn't have been. I mean, I was on 4 different things, I think.
Yeah, I don't think that was me.
Yeah, I think you were. Yeah, just like if you consider alcohol, if you consider alcohol as a.
Oh yeah, no, definitely.
So you were on 2, and then I had like maybe smoked a little bit, and then took it, and I was just all of these drugs were counteracting the effects of the other drugs I had taken that night. Dude, so it was like my brain was trying to like fight on which drug is winning in this moment. And that might have contributed a little bit to just like my general sense of going insane. Well, and then I ended up having a psychotic. Okay, no, I did not have a psychotic episode, but
I think I recall you ever having a psychotic episode.
I think I got really close to having a psychotic episode though, because of all of the psychedelics I had done, and I had what was it? I realized after one of my trips that like the trip was not ending when it was supposed to, and I ended up developing that effect or that condition where it's called Alice in Wonderland syndrome in layman's terms.
You told me about that.
Yeah, and I just like I thought I wasn't going to be able to function as a human in society again, and so I wouldn't say I had a psychotic breakdown. I had a kind of an overwhelming sense of anxiety for at least 1 or 2 months, or it took a while for that condition to calm down. But I definitely was very worried that I was never gonna recover from that.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's really good to experience those kind of things though, just so like once you're out of that phase, you then see like, okay, like I've seen the world from so many different mental perspectives that now I see it like in such you can have like such a more like open mindset to the rest of the world and everything
Mhm.
else. So when you're back out in the world, it's kind of like you're a whole new person.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think exploring different states of consciousness with like the help of, I wanted to find a different way to say drugs, but whatever, just drugs,
Plant
even
medicine.
plant medicine, yeah, or even just with things like meditation and all of that.
Yeah.
There's so many ways you can alter your brain and it, um, but getting used to the different ways it can perceive things, definitely I feel like can help you be fluid in different situations of your life. I think many people would say I'm a really fluid person, like very
Yeah.
adaptable to different social situations, different kinds of people. I've been able to have to sort of be friends with types of people that are completely different from each other,
Yeah.
just because I feel like I developed a fluidity. And I
Mhm.
don't know if that was necessarily from the drugs, but maybe it helped.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you can be friends with anyone, really. Like, I haven't really seen you ever not get along with someone.
Yeah, until recently, but but no, yeah, that's, I feel like, well, and I just have realized, especially since being alone in Texas, I live with my brother alone, and I have one friend here. And so I'm just alone most of the day because my brother's in his own room doing his own thing.
Yeah.
I I really appreciate this time that I have on my own because it's like the first time where I have to deal with my own mind again and like kind of
Yeah.
figure myself out again because I don't have the the social distraction that I had before. But I also realize that I am a very social person. So in the
Yeah.
future, um, yeah, I just really enjoy getting along with people, getting to know people. I don't know. There's just a lot that you can learn from other people. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Especially when they're like different than you or when they like think differently.
yeah, being around different kinds of people, you can just learn so many different perspectives. And I don't ever want to be in like an echo chamber
Yeah.
where I'm just surrounded by one type of people who all share like
Hmm.
the same political beliefs or
Yeah.
any kind. I think echo echo chambers can be pretty dangerous.
Well, it can turn into a cult, I think.
Hmm. Well,
Yeah.
it was just like you have a friend group and they're all parroting what each other are saying, and so all you're doing is um, you're just solidifying each other's
Yeah.
mindsets that you already had, but you're not challenging each other, so you're not growing, and you're just becoming more rigid because, well, you're getting all of that positive reinforcement from the people around you. You say something that could be completely insane, like objectively, but because you have five people that agree with you, you're going to start
Hmm.
thinking some things are
Yeah.
normal that maybe, whatever.
Yeah. No. And, I forgot what I was going to say, but it was like, shit. Well, okay. So if a group doesn't have a leader, then everyone kind of sort of, well, the idea itself becomes the leader of the community. And since there is no leader, everyone kind of becomes a leader. And I don't know if you've seen that episode of The Walking Dead or the season where like they're like, I am Negan. And then like all the people who follow Negan like
Oh,
say, I am Negan.
I stopped watching after season 5, so I never met Negan. So,
Yeah,
but
no,
I
I
can see
stopped at
that
like
happen.
7, but yeah, so everyone kind of becomes the ideal itself, and then everyone
That's an
becomes a
interesting.
dictator.
That's an interesting perspective. Like, yeah, if a group doesn't have a leader, like an idea itself becomes a leader. I don't know. It does end up being a good. a positive thing, or does it end up being a not so positive thing?
Well, no, then you have like the extreme left and the extreme right.
Yeah, but like they kind of have, I guess no, but they do have leaders though.
They have leaders, but a
But
leader,
it's their ideas that they subscribe to first, and
yeah.
I think people mold themselves
Hmm.
and reinforce those ideas and hold them strongly. So yeah, I guess the leader are their ideas.
Well, I mean,
Well,
it's kind of a weird thought. It's kind of like
it's
mix and
complicated.
match, and there's the ideas changes just as the leaders change in the movement. Leader, yeah, but
I
I
was
don't
gonna
know.
say, do you think in like a group of friends, like let's say there's just
Okay.
5 group of friends, do you think a hierarchy naturally develops just as a result of just normal social, like the way we work as social beings? Do you think there always ends up being like a leader of the group in some
Yes,
way?
yes.
Because I was gonna say, I feel like I've noticed that too.
Yeah,
In any group of friends, there's someone that takes on,
control.
I wouldn't say control. That's a strong. Well, yeah, but like, well,
Like
there's
the
some,
lead. They take the lead.
yeah, there's because I've had some social circles or like some friends like where it's just like an unspoken rule, and like it's like I'll
Yeah,
be the leader of this one, and it's not necessarily because like I'm
yeah.
organizing like the meetings or anything, but
Well, it's
when
natural though. It happens
mhm,
totally 100% naturally. No one tells you you're the leader. You just
right,
become
it's
the
just like
leader,
an
and people
unspoken
follow
because
you.
people
Yeah.
respect you. But
Hmm.
then there's other situations, other social circles where just by the dynamics of how it happens, I'm not
Hmm.
in that role, and
Yeah.
I'm yeah. So it's like kind of interesting where there does
No,
tend to be like a
100%.
natural leader that arises given a different social situation.
Well, because there's always like, and I've noticed that I always know my rank within a group of people.
Oh, 100%.
Does that make
And I
sense?
feel like that can sound like degrading or whatever to be like know your place. But I think it's like actually a really good or strong social skill to be
Yeah.
self-aware and be
Yeah.
humble enough to realize what like where you are objectively, like where you stand within a group.
Yep. Yeah.
And just in
Because,
life in general, like you have to have a realistic appraisal of
mhm,
your life and like yourself.
yes, exactly. That's well, that's like one of the reasons why like communism and like things like that just don't work because we're social beings. Because we're social beings, we have social hierarchies, right?
Mhm.
Because
That
some of us
arise
need
naturally.
yeah, that arise naturally. Because if everyone was the leader, everyone would just like be alone, right? No one would
Mhm.
ever get along at all,
But
right?
the problem with like I would say communism, is that what you said? You said
Yeah,
communism, right?
I said
Is
communism.
that the the hierarchy is manufactured.
Yes,
It's
exactly. It's a
it's like
manufactured
it's
hierarchy.
it's superficial, and it's not based on where a person would naturally find themselves fitting into the hierarchy.
Yes.
And so you have people that could be, natural born leaders that are forced into a role where they're literally not even capable of expressing their abilities. And then you could have someone who's, the leader who has no natural ability to be a leader
Yeah.
and like doesn't know how to
Hmm.
organize a group of people, how to
Exactly.
so yeah.
Yeah, because you have to like things have to happen naturally because when they happen naturally, it usually happens the best. I mean, obviously there needs to be controls, there need to be rules, regulations, things like that to make sure that, you know, bad shit doesn't take place when things happen naturally. But um
Yeah,
did, yeah.
which happens when you have all like the people involved in you could say the voting process, but the process involved in assigning a leader. I feel like Native American tribes always had
Yeah,
like
a leader, a chief.
but I mean some part of it is like lineage, like,
Yes.
and so you'll have a lineage and they'll teach these leadership qualities to the next one. But also there's cases like where um like the chief will die in with like a war or with another tribe or whatever. And so the group has to figure out, okay, so who do we assign? Like who has the traits that we need to assign as who can lead us? And it just happens naturally because they're all involved in that process, I assume. But
I think that's a really good part of capitalism, in that it allows things to happen naturally. But obviously, like as we're talking about, like natural things can also lead to disaster, right? And it's like we need something in place to prevent disasters, but also at the same time, when we do go out and try to save the world, we end up destroying it in the process.
100%, because like we think we're saving the world based on our attitudes, our belief systems, our perspective. Like it's like the idea of manifest destiny.
Yes.
I don't know, I forgot when that idea developed, but it was just the idea like that Western cultures had, where it's like, okay, we have the one true religion and the one true God, and it is literally our duty to bring this to the world, to the rest of the world, because they are suffering and they're in an ignorant place because they are not where we're at with our religious beliefs. And so they're in that, and they think they're saving the world by trying, like starting, the crusades and literally forcing people to convert to a system of beliefs. And when it's like some, like these people are perfectly fine on their own with their own system of beliefs. Like it's obviously been suiting them for thousands of years.
However long,
and they've built up different kinds of societies that obviously have worked out because they're still around. They if their system of beliefs didn't suit them, they would have annihilated themselves, or just been in a disastrous place.
Do you think, in a sense, ideas kind of take on a life force of their own, where this tribe has this group of ideas, and that group of ideas doesn't like this group of ideas, so then group of ideas A goes and attacks group of ideas B?
I'm trying to figure out what you mean by like, is an idea alive? Is that what you said?
Yes.
I think 100%. I think ideas are alive, and they're dynamic. They're not static. Like one idea can shift into, like, can evolve, but and that comes with like as generations of people evolve, and just you have so many different people who you have an original idea in there, but there's so many people who have their own perspectives on what that idea means, and so the idea itself can evolve. But I think ideas are alive. Like, I mean, we can go into like a metaphysical sense if you want to.
Yes,
but
go for it.
But I actually think ideas have a vitality that we're just not able to like measure with like physical instruments, if that makes sense. Like, but that's just my personal like spiritual belief. I think they have a, like, literally a substance. But like not something necessarily physically traceable, and it's just a concept. It's just a theory.
Well, I mean, Kevin, what is physical though? Like, what does it mean for something to be physical?
I mean,
I mean, what, like, everything that we see is created basically just what our brain is stimulating for us. So what
we literally
physical,
know, we literally know scientifically as a fact that everything that we see and perceive on this planet and in the universe is 99.9% empty space. Like, and then you say, well, what is the thing that's taking up space? And then you zoom in on that and you see the neutrons, or I can't even remember, like, the protons, electrons. Then you zoom in on that, and then you get to like quarks and stuff, and you zoom in on that, and it's empty. Like, it just continues to be like, the more we develop instruments that can see into like the building blocks of reality itself, the more we see that there's nothing there. And I mean, there's these concepts have been discussed a lot in like in the like sort of the scientific field, just like on podcasts and stuff. A lot of people are sort of waking up to that, and also it ties in a lot of to spiritual concepts, like the Buddhists say that the world is empty, and a lot of people kind of perceive that to mean like something nihilistic, but they just literally mean it's there's nothing there. It's all like in your head.
Well, I mean, emptiness also lends a hand to another interpretation of that, which is kind of it's free. There's a free space, and within emptiness, there's a certain kind of safety to it. There's nothing hard. It's kind of just free falling through emptiness.
There's a peacefulness at it. I
Yeah.
feel like at its core, and it's a peacefulness that creates the basis for all of reality to have that freedom to blossom and express itself in like so many different forms. I mean, I know this is kind of like what we're talking about is getting a little bit abstract, but just
Well,
like when we think about
whatever.
yeah, when we
Fuck
think about
'em.
all
Nah, I'm just kidding.
when we think about all of the different like
Yeah.
animal life forms and how
Mhm.
like flowers and trees and stuff, they all bloom out of this from itself, literally in blue, and then species bloom out of itself and create this whole web work. It's just like there's like this web work of this peacefulness and serenity, or like emptiness, that that allows for all of that to happen, for the expression of reality to be so free.
Yes.
If that makes sense. For it to like branch out in so many different ways.
It's so weird that we're all kind of just eating each other too. It's like all of life like feeds off of itself, but it's all powered by the sun, which is
well, and I think that's like
thing.
I think it's so beautiful that it works that way.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it sometimes I'll run into I'll see like a religious debate or whatever, and someone will say something like, if they're thinking of the universe and God in like the traditional Judeo-Christian sense, they'll be like, well, why would God create animals just to like allow them to get mauled apart by a bigger predator and be like literally in agony for however many minutes before they die? And it's just like, I think they're kind of missing the point. I think there's a unspoken knowing within just reality itself, and everything in reality, like including the animals, including us, even if it's so subconscious that we're not even aware of it, but it creates the security and the basis where an animal knows they're a part of a system, and that animal knows that
a hierarchy.
It knows it is both it is both predator and prey. And so we might see an animal in agony, and it could be in physical agony, but I think there's a level where it's like aware that its death is somehow serving the system as a whole, as it eating other things new.
Yeah, that's a horrible thing about humans and like putting bodies in these like coffins, and then we're filled with all these chemicals that's totally inedible. We're just taking ourselves out of the whole circle of life.
It's like, when did we divide ourselves from nature? Well, and what it kind of, if you think about it religiously, it's mainly, I feel like, Judeo-Christian cultures that have done that, but I might be wrong. I don't know exactly where.
I mean, it just comes out of the West. But
the West, because I think it was probably it was a thing before that.
But it's also kind of just a thing with so like predators are more solitary, right? Like cheetahs and all these are more solitary. And we're predators, right? We have forward-facing eyes. So we are trying to separate ourselves from nature just as every other predator separates themselves from nature. We want to be alone, right? So I think that's a natural, that's because you want to make sure that you don't get eaten by everything else because you want to be at the top.
Right. Well, what I was going to say is like, with the advent of like, okay, in the
Judeo-Christian,
in the
Judeo-Christian.
Judeo-Christian like faith or whatever, or like in that whole, how do you say it, like a belief system,
Yeah.
they kind of put God outside of the universe and
Yes.
outside of nature.
Yep.
It was like God created nature and the universe, but it's separate from it, right?
Mm.
Because but there were many other cultures that didn't see a God separate from nature. They felt that the source was within nature and throughout it.
Mm.
And I think in many of those cultures, like the Native Americans, they buried
Yep.
themselves in the
Yeah.
ground. I'm pretty sure. And then in like India, I think they put them in the Ganges River and stuff. But
Mm.
I think, well, when you have a God that is separate from nature, it's like almost above nature. They're seeing nature as something that needs to be controlled, or what
Well,
is the
they
word?
view themselves as something above nature too,
Exactly,
right? Because
exactly. Because
God created man in his own image.
exactly. So because they divided God from nature, and so maybe there's like this sense of like, yeah, as a human being, I am somehow above nature, even though we are nature itself, just manifests into it. One of its many different expressions, you could say.
Well, when you're, yeah, it's, uh, I mean, of course, I do think that in the Bible, like while, we're saying that God is in the Bible outside of the universe, I think all that is kind of a matter of interpretation. Because if you take it all as a metaphor, I think it can definitely be interpreted in a different light.
100%.
But
Well,
obviously, the cultures and societies and the ruling class of people in the Judeo-Christian Western world took the
mhm,
beliefs of the Bible and they contorted it in a certain way that then projected
right,
those ideals out,
right.
right?
And as a kid, it was interesting because even I was raised Catholic, but when I always conceptualized of a God that was
Yeah.
omniscient.
Omniscient.
Wait, no, wait, is that all knowing? That's all knowing, right?
That's
What's
not, yes,
omnipresent?
it
I'm thinking
is.
of I'm
Okay,
thinking of
omnipresent.
omnipresent,
Omnipresent.
meaning,
Okay.
and to me
Everywhere
that
all
meant
at once.
that, right. And to me that meant it was somehow like outside of the system, like it transcends the physical world, but it is still within everything that is
Mm.
possibly in existence. That's how I always conceptualized that as a
Yes.
child. And I still conceptualize it that way. And that's kind of like what my father taught me. But I noticed that talking to other people in my own faith growing up, and just leaders like I, I didn't necessarily talk to the priest themselves, but the counselors, like the Catholic counselors,
Yep.
they a lot of them didn't see it that way. They believed in a God that, like, they saw that God transcends nature, and so it's above nature, so God
Mm.
can't be in nature. I don't know.
Yep.
I don't know how to explain that, but I
Yeah, no,
saw
I
it
know
was
what
like,
you mean. It's like, but like God can't be, like God can't be shit, right? God can't
exactly,
be like
exactly.
poop.
No,
God can't
that's a
be
good,
violence or death, and God can't be
mhm,
all these horrible things. So God
that's
has
a
to be
good,
separate.
that's a great point. Like, yeah, God can't be these things that we as humans find disgusting. It has to be something that's above all of that. But it is, because it's not, well, I mean, my belief is that it is, because it is all things, but it's somehow like the whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
Yeah, exactly.
But
So like, how often do you feel guilty for something that wasn't your fault?
I, like, just me specifically,
Yes.
I would say probably like, okay, I sometimes feel guilty, I think, for things that I feel are not my fault, but I used to feel that guilt a lot more. And I think that might have come from the the Catholic faith I was raised in, with the idea of original sin being sort of
Mhm.
in the back of my mind, like, okay, I was literally born a sinner because of something that someone else did, like which like ancestral. What do they
Guilt.
call that? Ancestral guilt. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so there was always so I think, but also I was just, how do you say it, an empathetic person, and I feel like empathetic people tend to take on a responsibility, like they think they have to take on the responsibility of other people's actions. Like say someone is mad at me, and say I didn't do anything, somehow I would feel responsible for their anger, or in it, so, but over the years I've kind of been able to overcome that mindset, and more recently I feel guilt less and less for those kinds of things, because I've been able to work through that like self-deprecating belief system in myself, not even necessarily like going to original sin or anything, but as humans I think sometimes, if certain things happen in your life, you can think that you're responsible for things that you're not responsible for. I don't feel that responsible for, or I mean, I don't feel guilty for a lot of things nowadays, unless it is truly something that I have done. And yeah, sometimes I berate myself for things that I have done in the past that I know for sure I've done in the past, and can still feel guilty for. Like me and my mom, we used to fight, and so just stuff like that. And it's like, oh, you can't go back, you can't change those things. So what do you do though? You can't just sit there and um let that guilt overtake you and like feel like you need to punish yourself because of because you weren't necessarily the best person in the past. You have to find a way to let that guilt motivate you in a positive way.
Yeah.
And so I feel like I am getting better as I get older at doing that, at understanding like, okay, I resent a few situations, or I regret the way I have gone about certain situations in the past, but this is what I learned from it. And I try to focus more on what I learned from it.
Well, that's how
Then,
you grow. I mean,
yeah, 100%.
like forests, they don't grow unless there's a fire. Well, I mean,
Exactly.
obviously they do
Well,
grow
yeah,
without a fire, but you need that fire, you need that
mhm,
ash to fertilize the forest.
right. It's like it's a rebirth. Like fire causes a whole rebirth in a forest, and it's like that's a beautiful thing in and of itself. When I first learned that, I remember being mind blown, just knowing that eventually throughout the lifespan, I guess you could say, of a forest, it is beneficial for the forest to catch a flame.
Yes.
But
There's something you said over text. You were saying how you like, let's look for it. You were saying how you had to like destroy yourself and then like create a new self, something along those lines.
yeah, I did say that.
Yeah, I I couldn't find it, but it's like, what do you think that is? Like humans wanting to like destroy themselves and be rebirthed.
Well, I think it's one, us following the natural process, because everything in nature, in our physical universe that we find ourselves, has a cycle that it goes through. A
Yeah.
star explodes and then becomes like a nebula, right? And then from that nebula, eventually, I don't even know the actual terms anymore. I kind of forgot. But from that nebula, there comes a new star.
Yeah.
And like everything in nature has this process, and humans are the same way. And literally, physically, the cells in our body are dying and being reborn at a speed that is just so fast. And I think psychologically too, like there is you could like an identity that you can string along throughout your whole
Whoa.
life. Huh.
It's like, whoa, dude. Like, we have like this whole identity that's just stringing along our lives, and it's like,
Like you can still trace the thread of your identity,
yeah,
even though you're literally physically not the same person that you were
Mm.
like 7 years ago. You are in, they
Yes,
say, like you're in a completely different body, like literally.
you
But it's
are.
like
Yeah.
in your brain too is
Hmm.
complete. But it's like what? But there's this thread still of your identity. It's not like every 7 years or whatever you you're forgetting what your name is and where
Hmm.
your memories and stuff. So it's interesting. But I think the process of death, what's it? Life, death, and rebirth. It's
Yep.
just it's how do you say it? It's like a rule. It's a rule of reality. And so we go through it and manifests in so many different ways, like psychologically,
Yes.
physically.
Yeah, I mean,
And
with like stars, black holes, then I'm sure a black hole plays some role in redistributing matter, like energy or something in a way. At least,
um,
like if you look at how everything else operates in the universe, you would think that if you scaled upwards, it would operate in the same way. I don't know. It's
right.
all kind
No,
of fractal.
exactly. Yeah. Fractal. And I mean, they say we live in a fractal universe.
Hmm.
And I mean, I believe it. And I think, especially when you're tripping on psychedelics, you oftentimes like people will see the fractal nature
Yes.
of reality. And also when you are drifting off to sleep, if you sometimes when you're drifting off to sleep and you're staring at the darkness behind your eyelids, you'll notice geometric shapes, like literally the most beautiful geometric shapes start to form if you can get into that limbic state of mind. And it's like, what is that? Why are these geometric patterns so prevalent throughout not only nature, but why do they
What you're seeing
manifest
in
in
your
the mind
brain.
too? Mm-hmm.
So, do you believe in archetypes?
Hmm.
Or
Like,
like,
I
I mean,
know
obviously there's a
what an archetype is,
concept, but
but do I believe they're like inherent in
society.
like, well, I think they're inherent in society. I I don't know. I think like it's kind of hard because it's like, did humans create the archetype? But
Mhm.
no, it's actually interesting though, because I think there are similar archetypes across
Okay.
cultures, even cultures separated by like they had no contact with one another. And yet you can see the similar archetypes manifest in so many different cultures. So
Mhm.
maybe archetype. So if I believe in archetypes, archetypes, I would
Archetypes,
say,
man.
yeah, I don't know. Like, do I believe someone is like born and it's like, okay, I'm a warrior. Like that's my archetype. Because okay, for example, I'll be scrolling on the internet and I'll
Mhm.
see an ad for a quiz. It's like, what's your archetype? Are you the sage? Are you the warrior? Are you the magician? And literally just in the ad, it'll like list a couple of things like the sage is thoughtful, this and that, but doesn't take action. This is like one I had recently seen. The warrior
Mhm.
is motivated, blah blah blah. And I was like, well, yeah, but most of us have qualities from like literally each and every one of those things, or can develop them, you know. But I would say there are archetypes in a weird sense because we are more just when we're born. There's people that just kind of, even though their personality develops and changes over time, and obviously this is their brain too, the way their biology, they can represent different archetypes just
Just
as
through
they
the
are.
stages of life.
Yeah, through the stage of life, but it
Yeah.
can stay kind of consistent.
Well, I think
Even if they,
as humans, we're like categorical creatures, so we categorize everything. And I think it's easy for us to like think of life as stages, people as different figures that represent things. We're
uh-huh,
very symbolic
hundred
creature.
percent,
So I think these symbols kind of spread throughout time, and we
right.
have all
Well,
these characters. I don't know.
survival kind of depended on us making shortcuts. Like
Mhm.
our brain depends on making shortcuts as well. And so if we can just categorize different types of people, we can maybe more easily know how to deal with the same situations when it comes across at a different time. Like, oh, that person like clearly is this type of person and I've dealt with this before, so maybe I can get the same kind of social interaction out of them as with work with this person. I don't know. I have no idea.
So I was wondering, at the beginning of the conversation, we were talking about how you were kind of like disagreeing with how some things were going on the left, particularly the LGBTQ community. And I just want to like clarify what you meant by that.
Okay, like I feel like there's so many different things, but let me try to find like a basis.
Like, I don't know
From
why I just like thought of that, but
okay, so I
okay,
I
give you a
feel like
disclaimer if you want.
yeah. Well, I'm not disclaimer. I think I already did that. But
Okay. Yeah, you did.
okay. Somehow in the course of LGBTQ people becoming more pronounced and becoming a more accepted part of our society, somewhere along the line, politics got involved.
Yeah.
And I think it's like, why does a certain group of people like, okay, the LGBTQ community generally aligns itself with left-leaning thought. And it's
Mhm.
like, why is that? It's like, did the political left claim the LGBTQ or did the LGBTQ claim the political left? And it could be like, whatever. But I think what started happening is gay, lesbian, and trans people or whatever, they started categorizing themselves in this community. Like, I'm the LGBTQ. And so a group think starts to develop over time, as it does with every society that categorizes themselves in a similar way. But it's just interesting to me that something like, okay, so humans might categorize themselves by like their skin color, like in the past they have, but nowadays we, well, I mean, I say nowadays, but we're starting to do it more and more.
Yeah.
Again, we're starting to be more focused on differences rather than similarities. But it's like you take something. I'm trying to think of something, a way that humans are similar and different, but don't categorize themselves by it. Like we don't
Nose.
categorize. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so people don't like. People do not group up with other people based on the similarities of their nose.
Yeah.
So what happened that made it so you have someone who is born a different sexual orientation than is the norm? What caused them all to group up together? And you could argue that it was because they were, at some point they all had to get together and fight for the same thing,
Yeah.
or else nothing was gonna change in a positive direction for them. And so that makes sense. But when did it become like, why did getting rights and wanting a better life and the ability to live your life freely, just like the majority gets to, when did that become a political thing? And but also like, why? Okay, here's my problem with the left. I'll just say the left wants to like change the outside world because they think that that's going to make them feel more internally validated. So you have all these LGBTQ people that, okay, somewhere along the line they realize they are not straight. They're not a part of the main thing, and they want to feel validated in that. Well, which is perfectly human and natural because
Yeah,
we all
perfectly
need
human,
to be
natural.
accepted. But what happened is, I feel like it through over time like the process before was you found out you're like, okay, I'm gay. And the process was, okay, now how do I figure this out? How do I find a way to accept myself? And then you find a way to accept yourself, and then you approach the world in that way. And you find that by accepting yourself, other people tend to accept you too, because people are drawn to confident people, and people are drawn to people who are sure of themselves.
Mhm.
It's a trait that we as humans are drawn to. But what I think is happening is, instead of people first learning how to validate themselves and go through that journey, which I would argue is a rite to passage, not like, oh, you're not gay if you don't go through this rite of passage, but there's something really special that happens, that I feel like happened for me and other people that had to go through this rite of passage of,
Mhm.
you're given a challenge from society. I mean, you were given a set of characteristics that sets you apart from the majority. And in the process of figuring out how to make that work for you, you have to go through this process of grief. And then you like just you go through a whole process as you start to accept yourself more. But with the sort of woke community, well, and here's the thing, that process, when you come out of it at the end, you are so like so much more sure of yourself, and you now have this identity that was
Mhm.
developed over years of coming to
Yeah.
terms with your difference, that I feel like, at least for me, I felt like I had become a more powerful person
Mhm.
because I had overcome this challenge. And the challenge was to accept myself and to appreciate myself and feel like I was enough just the way I am, and I didn't need to be like anyone
Mhm.
else. And I became, I
Exactly.
feel like, powerful as a personality because of that challenge that I had to work through growing up. But now it feels like the LGBTQ community wants to change the outside world, thinking like, okay, if we yell at everyone and
Mhm.
call them homophobes, call them transphobes, call them whatever we can think of, that
Yeah.
is somehow it, gonna get them to accept us, and then eventually we'll learn how to accept ourselves. So I feel like the problem I have is that they're going about it backwards.
Mhm.
They're trying to seek external validation, um,
Rather than
thinking,
within.
mhm,
Yeah.
that's the thing. That's the main problem. Literally, that's what I would boil down the LGBTQ community. But here's the thing: it's like, I don't think it's not everyone in the LGBTQ community's fault. It's just that they've
No.
been handed this circumstance, through
Mhm.
biology, through environment, out, that's a whole discussion. But it's just like, as soon as you're born into that sort of, you group yourself up, and this group already has a
Like
political
identity.
identity,
Or
and so you just find yourself sort of shifting to that, because like, okay, I don't have allies over here, I'm going to go where the allies are. But then, because you're going and you're all associating with this one organization, this one community, this one group, you start to think the same. But it's like, we don't group ourselves up by our noses. So why is it that, like, all gay people have to think the same and think the same
exactly.
politically or whatever? And there's starting to be like a movement where it's like, there's LGBT people that are walking away from the association with the LGBT community,
Mhm.
which is like, how can you even do that? I'm the G in gay, or I'm the G in
Well, yeah.
LG. And it's like, what, how can you be the G and walk away from the community? Well, it's like, it's become a political ideology,
Yeah.
when before it was just about, we 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 are a part of this society and we're here to stay. and we just want what you guys have. But now it's become like, okay, we're this group,
Yeah.
and
Well, Kevin, you can't
literally
betray the tribe.
can't betray this tribe. And no, it's not in my best social interest either to like express this
Yeah.
necessarily. But
Well, it's like no one. It's just like any other idea. I mean, basically, like once an idea takes hold, it can kind of like you want to use that idea to validate yourself. So you
yeah,
become a part of this group and you adopt all these things. You can let the world kind of sort to be a part of you, right? And
mhm.
I think a lot of
Well,
that is that,
you just start to indiscriminately accept ideas,
yeah,
and it's like, okay, what happened where all gay people are all grouping themselves up in this way and then all forming a similar political identity or whatever.
yeah,
And it's like gay people are literally just people like everyone else, and they
yeah,
have so many
exactly.
various experiences, so many different personalities. And that's another thing, is like, I feel like the people who strongly associate with the LGBTQ community, they're making their sexuality before their personality.
Mm,
Their personality is based on their sexuality, and not their
yeah.
sexuality being a part of their personality. And
Well,
like,
yeah. What I think also they're like abstracting the idea of sexuality. Where, like sexuality used to be
they're
something very fluid, but now it's like
well, and it's
uh,
starting to change, and it's
I
starting
don't
to
know.
not even represent anything that it used to before. Like, okay,
Mm,
like the community itself can't even agree
yeah.
on many things, and so they're getting each other alive. And here I'll bring up like an idea. So a lot of like trans people have been coming out and saying, okay, it's homophobic for a gay man not to like a trans man. But it's like, okay, well, you just kind of invalidated my whole experience as a gay man. Like,
Yeah.
a gay man is a man attracted to another man, which basically assumes there's a biological basis for sex,
Mm,
which is like so controversial to say now. Like, okay, but that's what being gay is.
yeah.
And so as a gay man, I'm attracted to all of the traits that come with being a man.
Mm-hmm.
It's not one of the traits. So it's not like, oh, I'm attracted to just masculinity. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like, if a female was super masculine, like that's not. It's like I'm attracted to everything that
Yeah.
comes along, like the sexual organs,
Mm,
the masculinity, the demeanor, just so it's like the whole thing. And but now they're starting to be like, well, no, it's transphobic to not want to date a trans man, which it's like, and there are some gay people that probably are down for that, just based on their own preference and how fluid they
mm,
are with that. But it's like you're literally erasing
mm.
my sexual orientation in the name of trying to be accepting to everyone. So and it's like the feminist movement. Like, you have a lot of people that are like, okay, first wave and second wave feminism, awesome. Like, women deserved an equal place in society, which they got. And now that we have it, we have like all of these next waves of feminism that are outcropping and are actually like the mainstream now. And it's like some of the ideas that come along with them are just completely like, they're forgetting the woman
Mm.
that feminism started
Yeah.
to uh,
Start
to
like take
like the
on like
point of
they're trying
feminism.
to like improve the
Yeah,
right to women, right?
yeah, the feminism was made to give a platform to women, but now they're already starting to leave women by the wayside. And it's
Mm,
like we could go into for hours talking about that. But it's like
yeah.
these communities are developing, and then they're forgetting about where they came from. They're forgetting, you know what I mean? They're literally
Hmm.
forgetting where they came from and what.
Where their origin is.
Yeah, because it's like, okay, if you ask an LGBTQ person what they're fighting for, it's like, okay, what do you want? Like, if you were to go up to a protester, an LGBTQ person, what do you want? And it's like, okay, well, we want the right to gay marriage. Well, we were given that, and it's like, okay, we had gay marriage, and we got it. Like, we literally, as gay people, had an equal place in society as far as the law goes. But it's like, what they want is they want everyone to accept them, for them being gay. Like,
Yeah.
And it's like they want to control everyone so that they are unequivocally like accepted by everyone that they will ever encounter. And it's like, or else you're homophobic. But it's like, that's just not how the world works. Like, straight people don't get accepted by everyone that they see, not because they're straight, but for other reasons. There are people that are going to accept you for who you are, and there are people that aren't. And you, as an individual, are responsible for seeking those people out and learning throughout your experience as being a human, like, to how to identify the people that will accept you for who you are, and how to, and then you just don't associate with the people that don't. And it doesn't have to be like, it's like, why do you need some random person, let's say like they're from like the Bible Belt or whatever, across the country? Why do you need that person to accept your lifestyle? Like they might have their religious reasons, it's like, why do you care if there are some people, like, homophobia is still a real thing, but it's like they're focused too much on that, instead of just living out their life the best that they can.
Like, too focused on things outside of you, so you like can't really even control what's inside.
It's just like, it's
never... and there's so many different ideas that make that happen to you, because it's not about like LGBT, it's about ideas. And like, this same thing is what's going on with every idea, with being a Republican, being a Democrat, being an atheist. There's like a lot of dogmatism in atheism nowadays. The scientific community,
100%.
like
I
all
feel like
these
I just I feel like I went on it, like, I didn't articulate my argument really well, and so about LGBTQ when I think,
no, you did.
But I feel like I had,
Definitely did.
like, when I'm typing this to you over text, like, I feel like I can articulate this so well because I can think about it and like organize my argument. But
you're definitely not giving yourself enough credit. You explained it like perfectly well.
I kind of felt like I was just going like, I was trying to create all these dots, but then it didn't even make any fucking sense. So
it made perfect sense, man. Like, well, I mean, sometimes like that's the thing about ideas. They're like a river of thoughts. And like the thing is, when a river becomes still, when it becomes a lake, that gives a lot more chance for bacteria to form. Right? If you're not changing your ideas, you're gonna get sick. That's just like, that's how it is. If you're not a little fluid, a little easygoing, you're gonna get sick.
It's funny because like someone will be talking to me and I'll be like having some rant about some random topic, whether it's usually like some deep topic, whether it's the community, sexuality, politics, or spirituality, whatever, or psychology, whatever. Like, they're always like, oh, Kevin, when I talk to you, I feel like you literally just like I can see your mind creating like this whole fucking map. And then somehow at the end of the conversation, even though it felt like it didn't make any sense, somehow I came out of that like being able to connect it all, and it like creates this beautiful picture. That's what someone told me once, and I was like, that's the nicest thing someone has ever told me, because to me, I just thought I was being I was just like, okay, I'm just being manic.
No.
And
oh man,
disconnected, or just disjointed thoughts.
You're just connecting the dots. You're just letting it flow within your mind until you reach all these different things, and it makes perfect sense because that's a natural way that
it's like
that you're talking. So it feeds into our own natural pathways.
Well, hopefully that wasn't too ranty, but
No.
Basically, in conclusion, I think what I would like to see, not only LGBTQ people, but just people in general realize that the responsibility for their life is theirs.
Mhm.
Yes, we live in a society and in a world where there are institutions larger than ourselves that do affect the things around us, that like the economy and all of those things. But at the end of the day, you're only responsible for yourself, your own attitude, and how you approach every situation in your life. And I feel like by putting your energy in, like, okay, I think it was
Winston Churchill.
was it Winston Churchill? It was like, no, it was Rumi. It was the poet, it was the mystic poet Rumi that said, like, yesterday I wanted to change the world. Today
Wait,
I want
what's
to
his
change
name?
myself. Rumi?
Rumi.
What's
Wait,
that quote? It's like,
who said? Wait, what's the quote?
okay, it's like, yesterday I was clever and wanted to change the world, but today I am wise and want to change myself. It was something like that.
Change the world. Okay, I'm gonna share screen real quick. Okay, yesterday I was clever and wanted to change the world.
Today I am wise and want to change myself.
Today,
I think I butchered it, but that was kind of
wise
the general
and
idea.
want to change myself. Okay.
Oh my god, I've never actually seen ChatGPT in action before. This is
Okay.
my first time.
So this quote is often attributed to the 13th century Persian poet and mystic Rumi. You are correct. However, there is no evidence that Rumi actually said these exact words. The quote might be a paraphrase or a modern interpretation of some of Rumi's writings. Nonetheless, the quote has become popular and is often used to emphasize the importance of self-improvement and personal growth.
Perfect. That's exactly what I was after. But
Sweet.
it's just like, I feel like the short-sighted view of how to approach reality and your life is to try to change everyone around you. It's like, even in social situations, like, I I'm lonely and I want to make friends, so I'm going to try to manipulate, and I'm going to try to manipulate people into being my friends. Like, so like when you're younger, I when I was younger, I was how do you say it? I was misguided, and I didn't have a lot of friends in elementary school. So I would bring like $5 during on Friday, because they would sell candy in the cafeteria on Fridays if you had money. And because I didn't have many friends, I was like, well, maybe if I buy these people candy, they'll want to be my friend. And I did that. I would buy them candy. And so every Friday, like, a bunch of people would come up to me, and I would all of a sudden have a lot of friends. But on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday, I didn't have any friends. So, it's so when you manipulate a situation, when you're trying to, change all this stuff on the outside, because see, I was lonely on the inside. So I wanted to, not be lonely. So I was trying to manipulate a social situation and buy people's affection. And it took me like literally 10 or 15 years to really understand, wait, I need to accept myself, and then maybe this will maybe like this is the way to go about it. And I worked on that, and all of a sudden I never had a problem again with finding and making friends. People just were naturally drawn to you, because when you're sure of yourself, you attract people, you attract just better things, better people, more
So,
people.
how do you think this like all comes into play with like as far as being yourself, as far as trying to improve yourself? How do you think this comes into play on like your own spiritual growth and like And I know you as like a mystic, you kind of believe in this union with God, like trying to find union with God with like lucid dreaming and whatnot. Like, how do you think lucid dreaming and all these things and all these ideas, all this interchangeable stuff, how do you think that all comes into play with creating your identity and becoming the human being that you are, and all this suffering and the joy and all that?
Like, do you want me to go the route where like I explain my personal belief, or just in a general?
I don't know, I just came at you with like an atomic bomb of questions.
Yeah, that was like there's so much there. So how does it
Okay,
all relate to being human and
so like last
like
time we
spirituality?
talked about lucid dreaming, and I just want to know like what has been some of the craziest dreams you've had in the past few like months,
Okay,
or
I'm
like
gonna tell you the craziest. It was my first
what do
lucid
they
dream.
mean?
Gosh, I'm so bad at uh, decoding my dreams sometimes, and I haven't been writing them down for a while. And that's another thing I've been
Yeah,
wanting. I am gonna get back into, because that was um, a really good practice and hobby for me to try to understand myself more, to at least
yeah,
make the attempt. But I'll tell you about a dream I had a couple months ago, and it was my first lucid dream I had had in literally months, because I kind of fell out. I was in a rut and I wasn't practicing or anything,
yeah.
but it was here in Texas. And okay, so I get in this, I'm in a dream,
Okay,
and suddenly I am aware that I'm dreaming, and I'm I'm in uh, a jumping gym, like those gyms where you have trampolines in them, and I'm surrounded by a lot of like young kids, and
okay,
I myself am a young kid in the dream. I'm the young, like I am the child version of myself.
okay.
And suddenly I become aware that I'm dreaming, and like I'm looking around and I'm like, these all these kids are wearing masks on their face with lipstick, but
Yeah,
they put and they're like putting on lipstick, and they're like mocking me, and they're like they're like, ha ha ha, like you're wearing lipstick because I was wearing lipstick too. And uh that dream sequence ends, and I'm like, what the hell was that? And I was like, this, and I was like decoding it, and I was like, this was like obvious to me that this was a representation of my struggle growing up, of dealing with the fact that I had characteristics that were more feminine than most of the other male kids.
hmm,
And it was that process of dealing, because I kind of stood out because of that. And this dream
yeah,
was showing, and it was like, but there was the aspect of like where all the kids had masks on too, but I was dealing
hmm,
without a mask on. And, and so to me that represented, but all of these kids were being, they were fake. They weren't
yeah,
being their true self. Not that like to be your true self you have to be like gay or something, but it was just like,
hmm,
it was like they were all too busy laughing at me to, and they didn't want to show their faces because they were cowards.
yeah.
um but anyway, that was just the first part of the dream. But here's the craziest part of that dream is, somehow along that dream I ended up expanding out into basically a formless being that was presiding over a planet. And I don't even know how to like explain this. I feel like I articulated it well over text, I think, when I first told you.
Yeah,
But
yeah. I think you told me about this one.
yeah, but basically I was this formless being. I didn't have a body, and I was tasked with creating a planet. But there was another being with me, and it was weird because like I couldn't see another being there,
Hmm,
but I just knew there was, and we were doing it
yeah,
together. It was like we were friends, me and this being, and we were exchanging telepathic information with each other, but we were also each focused on
holy shit, yeah,
our own parts of like what we were supposed to do. And so I'm looking at this planet, um and my job was to terraform it, and to create, to seed this planet with what would eventually become the flora the plant life of this planet. And but I was in this experience, time was like not working linearly, because I was experiencing like all of time at once. And so I was, I was trying to create these plants, but I was seeing all of the different kinds of plants that could potentially be there. And I was like sifting through all of the possible combinations of the plants that could possibly exist and picking the one that would be in this particular mountainside, basically. But
like, how much thinking would your mind have to do to like process that kind of information,
Yeah, literally. And that's where I was like, what the heck? And because I was literally seeing, it felt like millions of plants, like literally like shifting through my vision within a second as I was deciding. But I was also seeing the plant in its seed form and the plant in its fully grown form, because I wasn't putting the plants there. I was seeding the planet with what would eventually become those plants. So I was seeing the process of, not only was I seeing all of the millions of plants, but I was seeing them through time. And
that'd be so crazy.
And I just remember, while simultaneously I was communicating with this entity. And so we're doing all these things all at once. And I remember waking up and just being like, what the actual fuck just happened? Because and I felt like I was in such bliss too during that experience. And so I'm not even going to comment on like whether or not I think that experience like meant anything or not. But I woke up and I remember just feeling fantastic for the rest of the day, because I was just like, bitch, I just created a planet. Or and it was just in my head, but I experienced it as a reality. You know what I mean? Like,
no,
it was real in that moment to me.
Like, it might not have been real in the physical world, but it was real to me. And that, I mean, honestly, as humans who are the only thing that can experience things in the universe, the only thing that is real is our experiences.
Right.
So
well, it's like, okay,
you did go there. You know what I mean?
It's like you you put on a virtual reality headset and you're walking on a skyline. Is that what it is? Like, you're walking on a plank between two skyscrapers, and you're like, you're in VR, but you're also having the experience of like the fear of falling and all the stuff in that. And so someone comes in real life and pushes you off the plank, and you scream because the experience of being on the skyscraper is real to you, even though you know it's not real. And so so dreams and all it's the same thing. So you experience it as a reality while you're in it, but then when you wake up, it starts to kind of fade, and it's more of just like a distant memory. But I woke up from that experience and I felt amazing, because I was in just such bliss. And I was also just curious about what it meant. Like, I don't have an experience like that often. But
yeah, that'd be crazy to even like consider deciphering.
It was like, maybe it wasn't meant to be deciphered. Maybe it was just like it was there for its own sake. Because that's another thing. It's like, maybe dreams don't need to be deciphered. Like, okay,
it's
like
not all of them need to be deciphered, right?
Well, it's like humans finding meaning in life. Like, what is the meaning? What is the meaning? What is the meaning? But it's like, what if there doesn't have to be one? And maybe the meaning is just its own beingness. Like, if that does that make sense? Instead of needing a meaning, what if the meaning is just is? It's like there is no meaning, but like, you have the freedom to create whatever meaning you want.
Yeah,
and
I mean,
so it is. And that goes into like existentialism and all that stuff. But it's like, maybe that dream just was its own meaning.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes meaning is kind of like a water that we drink, sort of spiritually. And sometimes you're drinking the water, and sometimes you're kind of just looking at how beautiful it is. So
exactly. Exactly. And I think the more you're trying to contemplate what the meaning of the water is, the less you're just experiencing the beauty of it.
The less you're just drinking a twisted tea, sitting in a floaty.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. That brings back. That was awesome. Yeah. Oh my God.
Man, do you remember when we did that like whitewater rafting thing?
Uh-huh.
That was fun.
I do. But who was on our raft? We were on the same raft, weren't we?
Dude, I'm sorry, but I don't remember.
Yeah, I was like, I remember that being like, I remember being there, but I don't even remember. I think we all were just so incredibly drunk that no one was going to remember that trip, but I just know that we all knew it was fun.
It was fun. I mean, I remember parts of it. Like, I remember the water splashed my face, like eating that food on the beach, stuff like that.
I'm pretty sure you were on my raft because
Okay.
I think I remember someone commenting and being like, damn, Greg, you're like carrying the team, because like there was a point where we had to like really like row, and you were like giving it your all.
Yeah, no, no, it's always fun to just like float down small rivers. But well, I mean, that one was a big ass river, but lots of rapids. But how much more time you got?
I mean, I don't do anything. It's about how much more time you want. But honestly,
okay.
If you're gonna publish this podcast, literally, I wouldn't even give it a title other than a complete tangent on random topics, because
no, dude, all we're doing here, man, is like thought surfing. We're just
we're literally surfing through thoughts, and I'm just like, I'm thinking about, okay, if you were to say this podcast is about this and someone clicks on it with the intention of learning about that topic, they're going to be incredibly disappointed. Like,
well, we'll call it life wave surfing through existentialism, idea and slavery, and addiction, or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, just something completely random. So, how many? How often do you interview someone nowadays?
I have been kind of just writing my own stuff and just doing like my own thing. I haven't really been interviewing that often.
Yeah. So. Okay. So when you've gotten like an author on this show, like, how are you finding these people? Like, are you reading their book and then you're like, oh, that's interesting, and so you email them, or like how?
I mean, I've tried doing that, but like the people I read their book, it's like they're already like pretty up there, so it's like hard to get out to them. So I'll usually post on Reddit, or I'll look on like philpeople.org, or
oh, okay, that's cool.
Yeah, so, stuff like that. If I'm interested in a topic, I'll be like, oh, that looks cool. Lately I've just been trying to write essays and do like some like just teaching about certain philosophy and like expressing my opinion, obviously, a little bit. But
I've been having an urge to start writing again, and I think I haven't been, because I was like, oh, I need to finish the first book that I wanted to finish.
Yeah.
And but I don't know how to finish it yet. But instead of just sitting there and not writing and not finishing that book, I figured I should just start writing something else for now, and maybe the rest of that book will come along. I was thinking of doing something more like an autobiography, but like intentionally embezzle it and like embezzle the shit out of it to make it more interesting. So it'd basically be a fictional story, but based heavily events on my life.
I think you told me about it. It sounded really cool.
Yeah, but it wouldn't be like advertised as an autobiography. It would be advertised as a fictional story.
Yeah, I mean, that's what you got to do, and obviously make it a little fiction for the fun of it too. It'd be kind of boring just to write about your life, you know.
Yeah, exactly. I want to have creative freedom, just to, if I want to add a dragon in there, not like specifically, but I want to.
Well, it still conveys the meaning. So like, because you're not really going for like telling people what happened in your life, you're going for telling them what your life meant to you. You know.
Yeah, exactly. I think it might not even be something that I necessarily think about publishing. it might just be a way, like a therapeutic thing for me to write how I perceived my life as it was happening, as I'm seeing it through the lens of the present.
Yeah.
It might help me to solidify maybe like an identity and come closer to finding myself, you could say, or creating myself.
Yeah, and it's like that. I'm like, our idea was like surfing through thoughts, and I think in a sense, when you go through all that struggle, trying to balance yourself and like make sure that you're kind of one with the waves, that's how you kind of know yourself in a way. You got to become like one with the universe and go with the flow, things like that. And sometimes the flow is telling you to go against the flow.
Exactly. No,
you know
true.
I mean?
Like the riptide, is that what that is? Maybe sometimes you're in the riptide where you go under and back.
Yeah, exactly.
But no, I think it might just help me process. Well, it's just like we probably don't often think about our whole life. And like it's like, what is my life?
Yeah, like
what did I even do? Like what, because it's just like through life you go through so many different experiences, different friend groups, different scenarios, and just so many different life events. Like what is even happening? So I think writing this autobiography will let me know what is happening.
Yeah, exactly.
For
Dude,
me,
because like I was even thinking like you were talking about being like the Queen of Moscow or something like that. And then I was even thinking like, what if there was like some kind of like TV show called like the Queen of Moscow, and it was just like a comedy or something like with you, and it was just like,
well, I mean, people have said that like if someone just strapped a camera to me, like it could become a reality show, because I think they're like, you're just funny and your life just, not now, my life is really boring right now, but the situations I would find myself in because of like my recklessness in the past, it's just like so sporadic and so spontaneous, and I think it could potentially make for a good show, but those days, like, they're over now, so it's too late for that. But
for what?
I mean, for like, if I was to do this, I should have done it 3 years ago, and what I should have done is my life experience through college, just the Kevin's life experience through college, and then just tied a camera to my chest and just recorded my whole college experience and then edited it into a movie. And I think it would have been a great movie. But
yeah, I mean, but that's the thing, you can always make like some animated like series, and then like you'll go into the dream world and shit, and like do all this crazy stuff. Like it can be fictionalized, like obviously.
Yeah, well, I had this idea of writing a book. Well, and you maybe, I thought you were saying, okay, like you gotta go or something.
No.
Like writing like that autobiography, as I said, as a parallel story, where it's like you have the aspect where I'm telling the story of my life as it factually happened, the way I remember things factually happened, while also having a parallel story that's like in a complete fantasy world, and where there's a completely different storyline going on, but somehow throughout the book you realize that the fantasy world, everything that's happening in this fantasy world, whether it was like slaying a dragon, doing this, correlated to an event in my life. And I almost thought about writing 2 separate books.
Wow.
One being the autobiography, the factual, and one being that. But then you read one and the other, and it like reflects it. I don't know. It was just,
like the metaphorical version of your life, and then the actual like physical description
exactly
of it.
the medical, the metaphorical. Well, it's like exactly like the Life of Pi. I don't know if you've seen that movie or read the book.
Yeah, I've seen it, Life of Pi.
But it's like the whole idea of that. It's like there was the whole theme of that was like did Pi experience this fantastical, crazy, miraculous story, or was it just were all of those things in the story a metaphor for something else? And then it's like you as the audience decides what it was.
Yeah.
I guess.
No,
I have
like
no idea.
no, yeah, like you're giving this metaphorical. Well, I mean, that's like what all these scriptures are. You know, the Bhagavad Gita, the Bible. They're these metaphorical versions of some concept or reality, because we're a species that imagines things in simulations, and we understand things in simulations, so we create stories to understand things.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, okay, are the stories real? Like, well, does it matter if the stories are real? Not really. It's just they help us. They help us in I don't know, creating the story. The stories help us to create the story. I don't know how else to put that.
Yeah, I mean, if you take things literally, you're just gonna get yourself angry because everyone sees
It's like, what's
things
the point of
differently.
taking it? Yeah. It's
Yeah.
like, I mean, people will fight over are these things are so many of these archetypal stories real or not? And it's like, well, first of all, what is real? And second of all, um, like why does it matter? Do you get value out of this story? And if you did, you don't. Why do you feel the need to defend it as a historical, factual
Mm.
reality? Why can't it just be something that gives value to your life because you've assigned it value?
Yeah, I mean, I think we want to like ideate ourselves on, like, attach ourselves to certain ideas. It makes us feel comfortable. Attach ourselves to certain identities, because then we become a part of that, and that full identity becomes a part of our power. It's like
Yeah.
a constellation looks better than a star in some regards.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we appeared one day on as conscious beings on a, a rock that's like
Yeah,
flying around. The
floating through
sun's like
space.
floating through space, and it's like, what is even happening? To go back to what's going on? That song. Oh, I love that song. It's like, seriously though. And I
What's
think
going
the
on?
fun, yeah, what is going on? Like, seriously. That's my favorite thing. Like, I just remember saying that all the time. I don't know if I would say that when I was tripping on psychedelics or just in general, but I remember that being a phrase that I would use commonly in my life. It's just like, what is happening? And it was like literal, like what is happening in this moment,
Mhm.
like in this situation, but also I meant it like metaphorically, like
Yeah,
what is happening?
yeah. Like, what is all this about? Like, how do I even exist? How, like, when I go to
Yeah,
sleep, I lose consciousness and I just time travel, you know?
like how did I end? Like how did everything end up happening so that I'm in a room with these people having this
Yeah.
discussion? Like,
Just like literally little tiny like tiny invisible balls basically are everywhere creating
yeah,
everything. Yeah.
literally a bunch of tiny balls, trillions of them, are just all, and then they're having a conversation and they're like discussing things about like what the balls are. The balls form together to come together to discuss what the balls are. By
Yeah.
balls, I think we're referencing atoms.
Yeah, and they and eat each other.
And the atoms sometimes hate each other. It's like, well, how did that happen?
Well,
They're
like,
all
but like on an atomic level, things aren't really eating each other. Instead, atoms are just basically going through them in a pattern. That's all
yeah,
that's happening. Like,
like a
atoms are
wave.
moving in a pattern,
Mhm.
basically, like a wave,
Yeah, a wave
not
function.
reality. Yep, that's like all it is. Everything just swirling,
Mhm.
mixing together.
Everything's spraying, and it's like, okay, but then we're in this room having a conversation. It's like, how the fuck?
Yeah, because the atoms are dancing, man.
Yeah, and the atoms are dancing. and they're conversing and laughing. It's so
exactly
crazy. So crazy.
shit. That's probably a good place to end the podcast.
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
All right, cool, man. Well, thanks for coming on. I'll stop the recording. All right,
Yeah.
peace out, everybody. Check out
Peace out.
into-the-absurd.com, and let's say huge thanks to Kevin. He's awesome.